Okay, so I don't often talk about business books, and it's purely for the reason that I think most business books are very repetitive. Most of them are very boring. Most of them kind of gloss over the important facts when it comes to success in life and the interpersonal skills, and they make everything like purely numbers, purely this, purely that, and it's just like I think a lot of it's just fluff, and I think a lot of it's just they say the same thing. So for that reason, I avoid them. But here I have some books that I've read in the business sector, various different topics that'll help give you some financial education. Because I think if you can become financially literate, that's the only way to be financially successful. I can't promise you that you're going to make $1 million today, but I can promise you if you're smart and you make the right decisions and you set up your life and you set up your finances in a certain way, you can live comfortably. And do you really need anything else? I mean, sure, it would be nice to be a billionaire, but if you can guarantee financial success, then you can guarantee a, stress-free, happy life when it comes to your later years. Maybe it sucks right now, but we can all make better decisions. And with that said, here are the books. Um, Hopefully you can see them all. I'm going to try to get them in frame. But the first one I think is probably the best, and that's why I chose for it to be first. That is The Psychology of Money. Gives you some basic financial information, not too detailed, not too exquisite with what it talks about, but the basic premise of this book is that when you treat money like your time, when you treat money like your freedom, and instead of going out and buying flashy things, you go and save things so that you can either buy back your time later on, you can retire earlier, you can go on trips with your family, you can do things that really mean something. And the other part of this book that I think is really important is that everyone talks, whether you go online, whether you go on like the financial YouTube or the financial TikTok, they all talk about compounding interest. They all talk about that 8% return every year. And they don't really talk about what that means. And what that really means is if you wait long enough, the average return on your investment will be 8%. But it's going to go up and down. It's going to just boom, 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 boom. And like most people determine their financial success, they determine their happiness based off an arbitrary number on a screen that does not reflect the actual value of the stock, that does not actually reflect the value of your investment. But when you wait long enough, when you don't pull out when it's the downturn, when you don't sell when it's the upturn, and you just keep investing and you just keep having a very conservative portfolio, that is the only way to guarantee financial success. And I think this is a tremendous book, and I think if you haven't read it, it's probably one of the best places to start if you've never read anything when it comes to business. The Psychology of Money is a must read when it comes to business. The next thing I have is the complete book of wills, estates, and trusts. The reason I would say you should read this book is because most people do not understand what you can do with your estate. Most people don't understand how to pass their money to their kids without any sort of tax burdens, without having to have long, arduous probate processes. And I think if you get a basic understanding of the estate system, then you have a basic understanding of how the richest, most wealthy people in the world conserve their wealth and pass it down to their children so that they do not lose any to the state, so that it lowers the tax burden, so that there's no inheritance tax. And there's a million ways to do it. I'm not going to talk about here. This is not legal advice. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you the information's out there for you to preserve your wealth, for you to give your children and your grandchildren and everyone that means something to you all the money that you make during your lifetime, and ensure that it goes the way that you want it. It doesn't go to the state. It doesn't get taken out as income tax. It doesn't come as inheritance tax. There's no sorts of burdens on the things that you give to your children, to your family, and that's really how you preserve wealth. I think it wasn't J.P. Morgan. One of the robber barons, Cornelius Vanderbilt. Cornelius Vanderbilt, when he died, 70% of his wealth instantly went to the government because he did not properly set up his estate. And now, 2 generations removed, the Vanderbilt wealth is all but finished, is all but gone, and it's just disappeared. Meanwhile, you still know Carnegie Mellon. Meanwhile, you still know the Rockefellers. Meanwhile, you still know all of these major, 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 major individuals. And I think if you are smart with your money and if you are smart with your estate, then you can set it up so that you can help the people that mean something to you well after you're gone. And that's why I think reading a little bit about estate planning and coming up with a valid plan and understanding these things well before you need to actually create a will is very, very important. The next thing I have for you guys is Tax-Free Wealth. This book goes into how to reduce your taxes, how to reduce your tax burden. What it basically talks about is there's a million different ways to reduce your taxes, but it only really benefits you if you have a company. It only really benefits you if you do certain activities and you invest in certain things. And what it basically teaches you is that the tax system is meant to have loopholes, is meant to have tax breaks, is meant to have all these things to incentivize certain types of business. So the reason why real estate is the greatest tool for wealth creation, if you already have wealth, is simply because the government wants people to have housing. The government wants people to develop land. The government wants people to create housing and create apartments and create all of these things that make it so that the government doesn't have to do it. And because the government doesn't want to get involved, because the government believes that the free market can fix this issue, they give tax incentives so that it's profitable, so that people don't lose all their investments, so that people can, slowly build up wealth through these assets, and then pass it on to the next property. Take their equity in one building and then move it to the next, and then count off depreciation. There's so many things when it comes to real estate, when it comes to other types of things the government wants to incentivize, and you can argue all day long about if this is right or if this is wrong. I mean, I hear both sides, I understand both opinions, but I think it's why not use the tax system to your benefit instead of using it to your detriment like most people do. And understanding these things and understanding where to put your money when you have money is so important. You can always learn what you need to do before you need to do it, and that will benefit you for when the time comes for you to capitalize on the opportunity. Next thing we have is The Intelligent Investor. I think this is Warren Buffett's favorite book, and it's probably the most interesting way to evaluate stocks. And I think this is very important if you're so unfamiliar with the stock market that you don't know where to begin. And I really wish I read this years ago, because I feel like a lot of the information I kind of already knew when I was reading it, but the details that it went into were so helpful, because it explained why certain things were a certain way. It explains why you want dividend stocks, why you want bonds, why you want, the S&P 500 and all of these index funds or hedge funds, or not hedge funds. What the hell is it called? Mutual funds. I love how I'm talking about this stuff. I don't remember what it is. But basically, it teaches you the numbers. It teaches you why certain things are the way they are, and how to basically invest in a smart way and not go into something blind. Not go into something and be like, well, I heard people talking about this, so I'm going to buy this company, and then it just goes down. How to actually evaluate a stock and how to see, does its assets and its market value, does that mean it's undervalued or overvalued? And should I invest now or should I invest later? And it teaches you all the basic frameworks that Warren Buffett uses, that all of the hedge funds use, that all of the greatest investors use, because any person can make 30-40% on a stock just by getting lucky. But can you make 10% on a stock every single year? Can you consistently make trades that make you money and don't lose you money? Can you consistently have the right amount of risk and the right amount of reward with the most minimal amount of losses? And it's just such an interesting book. Don't be scared by the length of it. There are so many charts in it. There's so many graphs in it, and I feel like this is a book that you can keep coming back to, that you can keep learning from. And it's basically the textbook that everyone should read when they want to first start getting into investing. And I wish I read this so much earlier, because it would save me so much heartache and so much pain. And it's a super interesting book. It'll teach you how to be a very conservative investor and how to make the best decision for the long term, because again, that's the only way to ensure over a long enough period that you will make money. Do not pull out when the market's down. You can sell when the market's up, but it's always best to understand that when you're investing for the long haul, when you invest on a long enough period, that's the only way to ensure that you will make it out ahead. The next thing we have is Alchemy. This is by Rory Sutherland. I'm pretty sure everyone knows who Rory Sutherland is. If you don't know his name, you definitely recognize him because he's viral on TikTok. He's viral on YouTube. He's that he's the British guy that's a little on the heavier side. I wouldn't say he's super big, but he's a very funny guy. He's very well spoken, and He has very interesting perspectives, and the overall purpose of this book is to show you that the marketing and the framing of a product or a service or whatever it is means more than anything else, because people like to be motivated by the numbers, but what motivates people more is the effect it has on them. Think about the Super Bowl ads. Think about all of the things that get you to go buy a product. Is it ever that the product is superior, or is it more so the way it's framed? Like, think about perhaps one of the best marketing campaigns ever is the Axe campaigns, where it was like, oh, if you wear this, then you'll get 50 women all at once. And it's like, that was some powerful marketing, because you had all of these young kids going to their parents, Mom, I need this Axe body spray. I need to get all the girls that I saw in the commercial. And it was like, it's not so much the actual product or the actual quality of the product, but it's the way it's framed, and it's the way that we see these things, and we have these status symbols, and what people are willing to pay based off of all of these indicators. And I think there's so many interesting facets of this book, but overall I think it's just super, super insightful, because no matter who you are, you're marketing yourself, whether it's you're on the back end and you're giving a pitch to your boss, whether it's you're in an interview, whether it's you're a salesperson, you're always pitching yourself and you're always marketing yourself in some way. And it's super, super interesting to understand these principles from one of the most interesting and exciting and well-mannered and straightforward approaches that I've ever seen when it comes to the subject. So love this book. Great book. One of the only ones that I would say is a must-read on these. I think the three must-reads would have to be The Psychology of Money, The Intelligent Investor, and Alchemy. I think if you read these three, these are the top of the top on this list, and I think these are the most important. But, the rest of them are all really good. The next thing we have is The Science of Getting Rich. This is not really a business book so much as it is a mindset book, but I think this is very, very important for two main reasons. The first one is the idea of wealth, the idea of abundance, and the idea of what we think we know about money is not really correct. There's all of these bottlenecks, there's all of these things that make it seem like money's hard to come by. But when you walk down the street, you're walking by millions of dollars worth of assets. You go down even bad neighborhoods, you see all of these businesses, all of these things. You combine all of those incomes and all of those revenues. That's still a lot of money. There's money all around you, and it's just when you open yourself up to the idea that money is all around you, then you make it less of a burden to obtain. And I think when we frame our minds in this way, then we open ourselves up to the possibility of creation. But if you believe that you can't do something, then you already solidify that you can't do it. But the moment that you open your mind to something, it's the moment you start your creative processes to achieve that thing. And I know this sounds like nonsense, but it's so, so true. And I promise you, if you start changing your mindset, that's going to be the first step for you to achieve anything. So with that said, we'll get into the most important part of this book, and that is the idea of creativity. Creativity versus competition, and why creativity is the only way to excel. Think about it. Everyone in their right minds is applying for all of these jobs, and they have the resumes that look pretty much the same, and the experience that looks pretty much the same. And do you think you're ever going to outcompete everyone? Maybe you can. But what if you spent the same amount of time you were competing with creating? What if you had a resume that was so unique? What if you reframed it in a way that really caught the eye? What if you spent time trying to be different instead of trying to be the same? Because insanity, the definition of insanity as Einstein described, is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. But we can take that and we can apply it in a different manner, and we can say, you're doing what everyone else is doing and expecting a different result. You're expecting to get that exceptional result without doing an exceptional thing. And that's what we're all doing. That's what we all do when we go to school. That's what we all do when we get the degrees that are worth less and less every year, because more and more and more people have them every year. And we expect that this is going to be a golden ticket. We expect that this is going to work out for us. But the truth is, you need to do something different. You need to stand out. You need to be different. Like, what would Apple be if Steve Jobs wasn't there and said, we're going to redefine everything. We're going to take a whole new approach. What would electricity be if Edison or Tesla didn't say, you know what, I have an unconventional idea and let's try it? What would physics be if Einstein said, you know what, I think all these guys were right before me. I think Newton had it completely correct. We would not have satellites. We would not have the modern world. We would not have GPSs. We would not have cell phones without Einstein. So it's like, what what good does it do for us to be like everyone else? And when you start opening yourself up to this possibility, then you start opening yourself up to new ideas and new abilities to get ahead. Because I'll tell you what, you'll never be able to compete with Amazon if you do the exact same thing as them. But if you come up with a new strategy and you find a way to fill the market with the services or the products that Amazon is not meeting, that is the only way that you can cause competition. That is the only way you can disrupt the market. But if you keep doing the same thing and you try to compete on the bottom line, you try to compete on pricing, you try to do all these things, you will never succeed. Um, this perhaps is one of the most important books you can ever read in your life. I would say if you're someone that struggles with communication, if you're someone that struggles with having positive communications, and you're someone that's really hard ass, you need to read this book. This was something that I read, didn't really like reading, but I feel like it's benefited me so much because it's taught me that it's not really the things I say that piss people off. It's the way I say them. It's the way I frame them. It's the way I come off sometimes. And it's like when you read this book, then you understand that every sort of conversation is a sales pitch. Every sort of conversation is, can I say something in a way that does not upset someone's sensibilities? Can I say something in a way that does not piss people off and lose me opportunities, lose me jobs, lose me the ability to reason with this person? And I think this book is essential for the world today because it's never been a time where people can have their lives ruined for saying less offensive things. And you know what I mean. It's both sides of the aisle. It's everyone. Everyone has sensibilities. Everyone has words or topics or subjects that when you say, their brain just explodes and they go pure lizard brain and just start yelling and screaming, and there's no sort of reason. So to avoid these sorts of things, I think we need this book now more than ever. This book talks about how to be a good person and how to give someone the better end of the deal versus you saying, I need this, and not showing them why you need that. It teaches you not to argue. It teaches you to use a little bit of honey instead of trying to get whatever it is that you want out of the person and blindly just attack. And I think super, super essential for today. A must read, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily business. That's why I would say the other three books are essential. But this kind of blurs lines between business, personal relationships, psychology, as well as self-help, self-improvement. Great book. Definitely one that if you like reading, you need to read this as well. The next thing we have is a very short book. It's The Richest Man in Babylon. I wouldn't say this book is something that's going to teach you a lot that might help you, but it's interesting because it teaches you a lot of financial wisdom through the form of story. And I don't know how much applicability it has, but it definitely can help you with the mindset. It could definitely inspire you. And there's something to be said about a good story and how a good story can teach you messages that would compel you more than if you just heard it, than if you just read it, than if you just saw it. And it's the demonstration through stories that was passed down for generations upon generations that really form the basis of our society. But it's super, super interesting to read this book and read the advice it tells and see its applications and see how it can carry over into your life. Definitely an interesting book, definitely something worth reading if you're interested in finance and you're also interested in stories, because it's very allegorical and it will definitely teach you some things that I think you could take away. I just don't know how applicable it is versus the rest of these books, but definitely an interesting read, definitely something you should pick up at some point in your life because it's just one of those books that it's like, yeah, I read this, is a pretty cool book. The next thing we have is .com Secrets. This is essential if you want to start a business, and this is also essential if you are working for a corporation because it explains sales funnels, it explains sales leads, and explains how commerce is done on the internet. And without this book, you are at a loss. You are a ship with no compass. You are a ship that does not understand what is going on. I was once in a meeting and they were talking about, oh, we set up this platform, we set up this thing that we can sell these products online. And they didn't even have a payment process. Mind you, they're selling something on the internet and they don't have a payment process. They don't have a selection that you can click, boom, and buy it right there. And what they messed up on was they didn't understand that if someone puts something in their cart and they don't buy it, that immediately drops the amount of sales. If you don't basically put people through a process where they can buy something right away and they have time to think, then immediately the sales will drop. And that simple mistake they made could have boosted their sales so much, could have allowed them to get out of the hole they dug themselves into so much. They dropped millions and millions and millions of dollars into this one funnel system. But because they didn't have an option to check out, they lost so much money. I bet you these people, maybe they didn't lose their jobs, but they definitely didn't get bonuses. And it's just this one idiotic decision that kept this product, that kept this pitch, that kept this campaign from being successful. And I think, even if you work for a corporation, this is something that you really need to understand, because once you understand advertising, once you understand marketing, then you understand how commerce and business really works. And this book explains perfectly why companies do certain things, why people want your email. Like, have you ever been to a website and they're like, give us your email, we'll give you 10% off? Why do they do that? This explains how email campaigns work. This explains sales pitches. This explains offers. This explains everything you need to know when it comes to the internet. I'm not saying you need to apply any of these things, but I'm saying to understand this is to understand the e-commerce, is to understand the influencer sphere, is to understand how corporations are taking your data, are taking your email, are collecting everything and somehow making money off of it. And if they can do it, it means you can do it as well. I think it's, one, going to be interesting to understand advertising, but two, going to be interesting if you ever want to be an entrepreneur, or if you want to understand the inner workings of e-commerce and why it is so effective and what you can do and how to better use it. So maybe that you pitch it for your company. Maybe you help your company out. Maybe you improve their sales funnel. Maybe you do one little thing that incrementally increases everything. And it's like, I don't know, it's frustrating to me that people work for large corporations and don't understand these things. But anyway, with that said, we're like 20 minutes into this video. I didn't know this video was going to be this long, but yeah, love you guys so much. Thank you guys so much. I don't know if I can do any more business videos, because I think these are really the only ones I suggest, but maybe we can go into more detail about some of the books I've read, what they've taught me, some of the interesting facets, and maybe we can react to more financial information. Because I think if you can become financially literate, then you can become financially stable. If you can become financially stable, then maybe you're not a millionaire, maybe you're not a billionaire, but you can be happy. It'll be a lot less stress. It'll be a lot less strife. One of the largest causes of divorce is financial instability, and that's the last thing we don't need more broken families. We don't need more broken homes. We don't need more broken people. And it all starts with your ability to control your money, your ability to control your finances, and set yourself up for a great future. So with that said, hopefully this inspired you to pick up something that helps you on your financial journey, that helps you with your financial literacy. And yeah, not financial advice at all, not a financial advisor. I don't really know that much in detail. I know broadly some information, but I think these are all things that you should explore, and these are all things that you should study yourself, because once you have this information, it's always kind of there, and it's always something you can pull from when maybe you're not in the position right now to start investing. Maybe you can't spare some money, but there's going to be a point in your life when you do have a little bit of change, and instead of going out and spending on something stupid, you can put it towards something that is going to benefit you in the future, that is going to benefit your family in the future, that you can probably pass down to your kids or your grandkids or whoever it is that means the most to you in your life. And yeah, that said, I love you guys so much. Thank you guys so much. Peace out. I'll catch you in the next one.